We spend a lot of time, Brian Weed, I talking on this site and on the Press Row podcast, and obviously writing on Pasta Padre and various places about Madden and NBA 2K and FIFA and NHL, as we rightly should, because those are, in many cases, terrific games with lots of great stuff and plenty to talk about. One of the games that I'm just so happy keeps making news, though, is Pro Evolution. I'm not sure if you noticed this, Brian, but this past week was Gamescom, was a big video game conference. Basically, it is the European version of E3. And a lot of news came out of it. Number one was that Pro Evolution from Konami won the best sports game at the conference. Number two, there's a demo coming for this game, Pro Evo 16, on August 13th. So that's just a few days away. And number three, just the fact that it even is not only exists, but is because of the issues related to Konami, the company that makes it, but they just also secured the license for the European Championships as well. I am fascinated at how this little underdog of a franchise is really number one, it has established itself as an absolute player on the next generation consoles, because last year's game was terrific, and it seems to really have a lot of appeal to a lot of players, really, I think, savvy, football fans. And again, number three, like the little engine that could, snapping up these little licenses. It already has the Champions League. It's already got the Europa League, and it's got a couple of, the European Super Cups and stuff. But now with the, UEFA, which is a big deal. I mean, if you're not that familiar with European soccer, the UEFA, the European Championships, is really second only, I think, Brian, to the World Cup in international importance. So it's just fascinating to watch this franchise, this little underdog, not, sort of fade into the distance, but rather just sort of keep fighting. It's kind of funny, kind of interesting to watch.
Yeah, and Euro, like you were saying there, it's a big deal, and it's a big enough deal that EA Sports has released. They've had the license for the last 14, 15 years. They released a game every 4 years for that, just like they do with the World Cup game. It's a big enough deal to justify its own game, is what I'm trying to say. So that Konami got that, and we don't know how they're going to utilize that, whether it's going to be part of the Pro Evo product in the future. It's not going to be in this year's game, first of all, but it could be in the future if they create a new an offshoot of Pro Evo is another option, just like EA had done. So they're making waves here, and we talk about it often. This series is strong in certain territories. FIFA dominates the world in general, but Pro Evo has a strong standing in South America and Japan. So it's growing out of that, and really it's a last-ditch effort because Konami's shutting down most everything they do on consoles, but it looks like they're still investing in this series, which is fascinating. And then it is one of the few sports that have competition, and they're going at each other in interesting ways. We don't see an NBA one have certain licenses and one have the other for the most part. 2K does have the European teams, but that's such a minor part of their product. So we're seeing major pieces in each one of these games that's a feature of one or lacking from the other. And then the demo is a fascinating part of this to me because EA is definitely going away from demos. 2K and Sony have pretty much just eliminated demos for sports games. And Konami's coming out with theirs a month before the game comes out, well in advance of anything for FIFA anyway for people to play, because I don't know if there will be a demo for FIFA, but there will be the EA Access, which means 5 days before. But they're really getting a jump here, giving people a chance to play it. And that's a smart move, especially with so many games coming out. If they can hook people and say, oh, well, I'm definitely ordering this one, that's a big deal at this point. So it's pretty interesting to watch how these companies are going about this in one of the few areas of competition, and maybe the only serious competition that we have going on at this point, because basketball doesn't really qualify given the state of one of the games.
Well, I think that's one of the most important things. I played more of this past year's Pro Evolution than I ever have any Pro Evolution. I mean, and it's not even close. And I'm telling you, it is a terrific game. And again, I am not a hardcore aficionado when it comes to international football, but I'm much more aware than I was 5 years ago. And I really, really enjoyed so much Pro Evolution. It was very smooth. When I was able to actually score, where I am in Pro Evo now is where I was in FIFA a few years ago, where just scoring a goal, any goal in Pro Evolution for me is a major accomplishment.
Any goal in a soccer game, regardless.
And I lose almost every game. I think I played probably 25 games of a season with Everton, and I don't think I won more than 3 or 4 games at the most. But yet it is so visually pleasing. And not because of the presentation, not visually pleasing like FIFA is, but just, again, the animations of the players, the passing, the movement was really, to me, just kind of just so well done. And you know, seeing what's coming out of Gamescom and watching some of the videos and seeing it win, you know, the sports game, award, which Gamescom is clearly tilted towards Pro Evo because it won the sports game award last year as well. But that was for the next gen console game, which again was terrific. Go ahead.
And the only other sports game there is FIFA.
There was FIFA and I think one other one, but yeah, it's basically FIFA versus Pro Evo is what it is. You're right.
Yeah. So it is, you know, they are making waves. This was my in the mix for the best gameplay award on my site last year. It replaced FIFA. Every other year we had done it for 7 or 8 years. FIFA had been in the mix there, and it actually took FIFA's spot last year. Didn't win, but just being in there was a big deal because in North America, the series doesn't have very much traction. But I think people are exploring that now. I think especially with FIFA, you know, it got so big. And there is a sense with a lot of people that maybe it's getting a little stale. Maybe EA isn't innovating. The flaws in the game haven't necessarily been addressed to the extent that the hardcore fans are looking for. And we can go back over history. You know, no game stays on top forever. You know, we've had, you know, FIFA was the underdog at one point, and they flipped, and Pro Evo dropped off. And it happened in NHL. It happened in NBA. It almost happened in football. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that this game can do better with consumers this year and in the coming years. It's just a question of how long is Konami going to last, and can they actually stick with it? And that's the biggest issue.
Yeah, and as we sort of briefly mentioned, but basically, just for those of you who are not familiar with it, Konami, who is the publisher, a Japanese publisher, has, for the most part, said that they are getting out of traditional console games, going much more towards mobile, as a lot of Japanese publishers are, just because that market has shifted dramatically towards mobile, going more towards some of their casino games. What's interesting about Pro Evolution, it took them a long time, Brian Weedeye, but they have finally adopted. Last year was their first year doing Ultimate Team style game modes. And I have a feeling that a Pro Evolution, which I have been told by Pro Evo folks when I've interviewed them on the Press Row podcast, it has always been profitable. So if it can maintain that profitability, and perhaps even because of the additional revenue that comes in now that it's no longer the last sports game that is the $60 and then that's it. Now that they're also generating more revenue, it could actually follow very well in line with what Konami's new business model is. So I have a feeling that it probably did pretty well for them last year, which is why the reinvestment, which is why the purchase of the UEFA license, again, they're very good. They have great relationships, you know, internationally with the European. But to me, this signals that this game is here and it's getting bigger and stronger. And I have a feeling, and maybe it's just wishful thinking, but honestly, I have a feeling, Brian, that the Pro Evolution versus FIFA is going to be a legitimate battle now for the next few years. I think they got it just in time where they could be sort of on an equal footing with the additional digital revenue. But I think they did it, and I really have a feeling that this is just the start of some bigger things.
Yeah, they had really been teetering on the edge of obscurity, of kind of reaching that point where people wondered, is this series going to get canceled, before even all this stuff with Konami started shifting. And they bounced back last year. Last year was a big release for them because not only was the game better, but people recognized that the game was much better than it had been. And that doesn't happen overnight generally. I mean, the game had been getting better over the years, but not the dramatic leaps that people were expecting or looking for if they're going to have an alternative to FIFA. And that people recognized it last year. That's the first step in building up, is you have to get people paying attention. If you make a great game and nobody knows and everybody's still playing the competitor, you can't sustain that for very long. So I'll be curious to see what kind of presence that has, especially in North America, because that'll tell us if it is breaking out of that shell or not. And I don't know. It is interesting, but again, it falls within that window that we've talked about, Rich, with so many sports games, not just FIFA. So it beats FIFA to market by a week, which is a big deal. But it's still in the middle, even in Europe, and NHL has a presence there. NBA 2K has a presence there. There are a lot of games coming out. Forza has a presence there. A lot of games coming out. How are people going to prioritize? Is this going to be at the top of their list with one or two other games, or is it going to slip off just because of that? And then people are going to go with what they rely on, what they know more, which is FIFA or one of the other games. We can say that about all the games almost, but it's gonna be fascinating to see how these games hold up against that competition.
But that's why I think, Brian, that it was so crucial for the Pro Evo team to get the UEFA, because that is summer of 2016. That is going to be the first time ever that the Pro Evo franchise is going to be front and center, right? Like, so this fall, yes, it could get lost in the mix of the Maddens and the NBAs and the NHL, even if you're just a big time, soccer guy, and you have to choose between Pro Evo and FIFA, right? That could be a very difficult choice. But next late spring or early summer, right before the UEFA kicks off, which is a big deal, it will be front and center. And I think the combination of another strong release this fall, and then that double whammy of having that European Championship, whether it's a DLC, which if it's me, right, if I'm making the decisions, I'm making it a DLC.
Oh, Rich,
which would then get more people to buy my game. Right? Or $20 standalone. Either way, like, just the fact that it's going to be there front and center, I think, is a huge win. I think it's big for the franchise and could set them up really well for the next few years down the line.
Unless they half-ass it, Rich, which is what EA did with it last time when they put it out as DLC for the FIFA game, right?
Yep.
But they only included something like a third of the licensed teams. Everyone else was generic, right? So if they are going to make a DLC, which generally means you can't top $20 of DLC in a game, they have to invest in it fully. They have to make it a full add-on. They can't half-ass it like EA did, or they're going to drown with this, and they're going to lose that potential you were just talking about.
No, I mean, I would imagine most of the players that are on the clubs are already in the game. So it should not be particularly difficult to just reorganize those players under the auspices of I believe, 24 international clubs, set up the groups, and
it was 53,
have a go.
53, I believe.
Either way, but the stadiums and the clubs.
Right. It's a lot of licensing, though. It's still with the nations.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, for sure.
Building out their kits and all a special presentation. So there's still a lot of work they have to do, even if they do have kind of that base for it already in place.
But it is a great opportunity for the first time, easily the first time on the current generation, and probably the first time ever for Pro Evolution. If you want to play UEFA championships, which are happening right now, the only way to do it is with the Pro Evo game. Could be a great introduction or an affirmation that the Pro Evo franchise is the franchise to go for. So it'll be fascinating to watch. But Pro Evolution, I love it, Brian. We want competition. Boy, we got it. It's awesome to be a part of, and I am a big fan of the franchise. I'm day one on Pro Evo this fall, and I love to watch all this stuff happening with the little franchise that could.